I welcome you all to the module 3 which is about biopsychological perspectives on personality psychology. So, in this particular module we are talking about how personality is linked to biological aspects. So, today is lecture number 6 and it is the second lecture of this module. So, it is an overall lecture number 6 which, so today we will be talking about one of the aspects of biopsychological perspective of personality is evolutionary psychology and personality, how evolutionary psychology is connected to human personality. So, before we talk about today's lecture, just to give you brief recap of the last lecture. So, last lecture was again about biopsychological perspective where we introduced some of the ideas related to how biological aspects or physiology or human physiology could be connected to human personality. So, in that context we looked at some of the early views and theories that connected biological aspects with the personality, which includes connecting certain body humors with the personality or temperament, connecting body types with the personality, connecting skull shapes in the phrenology with the personality. So, these are like most of them are not very scientific, but they were these theories tried to connect certain aspects of biology with personality. Then we talked about some of the more contemporary research on temperament and how it is connected to biological aspects. In that context we discuss inhibited and uninhibited personality types and how it is related to biological aspects. Then at the end we talked about how the most contemporary research in biopsychological perspective looks at behavior genetics, where they try to see connection of or the role of genes play in the determination of human personality and so on. So, we discussed the diverse research findings associated with those directions, particularly the twin study project proposed by Minnesota twin study project and other contemporary findings associated with them. So, these are some of the things that we discussed in the last class. Today, we will be talking about evolutionary perspective and personality. So, we will be talking about principles of natural selection and sexual selection, principles of evolutionary psychology, and then at the end we will be talking about how evolutionary psychology is connected to human personality, particularly in the through the two particular theoretical perspective. We will look at that. One is bus theory of personality and adaptation and another is life history theory. So, let us start today's lecture. So, when we talk about biological roots of any behavior, there are two kinds of explanation given. One is called as proximate cause, another is called as a ultimate cause. For any theory that talks about biological basis or roots of behavior, we can kind of place that theory either as an explanation of proximate cause or as a theory that talks about ultimate cause of behavior. Now, proximate causes basically connects to immediate biological processes occurring within the organism when the behavior manifests. So, proximate causes are mostly related to within the immediate biological system, like what is happening at the body in terms of functioning of the different organs, functioning of the hormones, neurochemicals and so on. So, lot of these proximal causes we have covered in the last lecture. So, this is one way where one aspects of biological theories that talks about only proximate cause. The second categories of theory which talks about ultimate cause, and when we talk about ultimate cause they are asking different types of question. They are not just asking what is the immediate biological reason for such particular behavior, but they are asking more deeper ultimate questions related to the cause of a behavior. Now, in the ultimate cause they ask question like what purpose does a particular biological mechanism serve within the organism and why does it react to the environment in a specific manner. So, ultimate cause asks more broader and holistic question that what is the ultimate purpose of a particular mechanism or biological mechanism, why it happened in the first place. So, that is the bigger question they ask. So, basically the evolutionary basis of explanation of behavior from the evolutionary perspective falls under ultimate cause theory. So, evolutionary theory basically deals with ultimate causes, explanation of ultimate causes. So, they are not just interested in saying that because of certain neurochemical changes certain behavior happens, this is proximate cause. They will ask why a particular neurochemical behavior or a mechanism evolved in the first place? What is the ultimate reason for this? How it helps organisms or individuals to adapt and survive? So, basically, scientists try to understand how and why a given biological mechanism evolved in this particular paradigm, which will be focus of this today's lecture. So, when we talk about evolutionary psychology, we cannot miss out on principle of natural selection. Okay? So, this is something whenever we talk about evolution, the principle of natural selection is the first thing that comes to our mind in order to explain any behavior. So, there are two major principles, one is the principle of natural selection and another is principles of sexual selection. These two are the major theories that was proposed by Darwin in his conceptualization of evolutionary principles. And to understand human personality from the evolutionary perspective, let us just briefly understand these two theories little bit, just to give you a brief background, so that we can relate it to the other concepts when we talk about personality. So, since Darwin's time, ultimate cause explanation in biology have often been centered on natural selection. So, in order to explain the ultimate cause of any behavior, evolutionary theory comes to the principles of natural selection in order to explain why a particular mechanism evolved. So, one of the basic explanation is principle of natural selection that was proposed by Darwin. So, this principle basically suggests that some biological features are better than others, at least for organisms living in a given environment. The organism that possesses those features are more likely to survive and reproduce. So, basically the nature selects those mechanisms and features within an organisms which helps them to survive better. So, anything within the organism, any mechanism which promotes survival and reproduction are selected by the nature and they are passed down to the next generation. So, that is the idea of natural selection, So, anything that helps you to cope and adapt in an environment is more likely to be passed down to the next generation, more likely to be selected by the nature to be passed down, and any functioning which is not helping you to survive better or adapt better, they will be in the passing generation, they will be weakened, they will not be selected by the nature. So, that is the idea of principle of natural selection. So, what happens over successive generations, the population tends to be dominated by individuals with those advantageous traits, leading to the evolution of biological mechanism itself. So, as the generation passes, more and more of these advantageous traits which are helpful in surviving, they become more and more prominent as the generation passes, and those other features which are not advantageous, they become less and less, and ultimately a new trait is evident in the population of a particular species. This is how new evolution happens, through the principle of natural selection. For example, this is just an example. Let us say here there are beetles. So, there are two categories of beetles, one is brown color, one is green color. Let us say initially we have 3 brown color and 3 green color beetles. Now, let us assume that these green color beetles are more easily spotted by the predators, like bird will eat these beetles, but as compared to brown color, green color beetles are more clearly visible by the birds. So, naturally what will happen? These green color beetles will be more kind of predated by the predators, or they will be kind of become a target of the predators. So, predators will eat them more. So, their chances of survival will be less. So, what will happen? As the generation passes or the time passes, you will see the less of the green and the more of the brown beetles available in their population or in the whole species of beetles. So, green population will lessen, brown will become more and more, because their survival, their body color helps them to survive. So, nature will select them more and more simply because this brown color beetles are more likely to survive, because they are less kind of visible by the predators and so on. So, green color will become less and less, or ultimately they will get extinct. So, this is an example of natural selection, how it can happen. Now, one of the main problem that Darwin faced using natural selection as an explanation of evolution, he found certain exceptions in his explanation. Some of the mysteries that puzzled him. For example, he observed that certain traits like elaborate plumage and large antlers in male various species, some of the characteristics which seems to be predominant in the population of certain organisms or certain species, it seems obviously they should not get passed down to the generation, because they will make them more likely to be attacked by the predators. Like if you see the elaborate colorful plumage of, let us say, peacock, they will be easily visible. They are very colorful, and the kind of very the expression itself anybody can observe that. So, they should become more target of the predators. And antlers like deers, where there is an elaborate kind of horn and so on, this thing should be detrimental for the survival, but this thing still continues in the evolution. So, this for example, this is one puzzle, that kind of mysteries, that kind of initially the Darwin was puzzled by some of these things, where it seems contrary to survival. So, these are the traits which are contrary to survival, because it will make them more visible to the predators and so on. For instance, the vibrant plumage of peacocks appeared risky as it made them more visible to the predators. To address some of these anomalies, Darwin introduced another theory, evolutionary theory, called sexual selection. For explaining these exceptions, Darwin also added one more theory to the natural selection, which is called the theory of sexual selection, to explain some of these exceptions. So, he proposed in the sexual selection theory that things like peacock's tail and stag's antler evolve because they enhance mating success, giving individuals an edge in competing for a desirable mates. Because these qualities are advantageous in terms of mating, because these are the qualities of a male which makes them more attractive, so that they are more likely to mate with the female counterpart. So, these qualities, even though for survival they may not be that advantageous, but for sexual context these qualities could be more advantageous. So, the concept suggests that this trait evolved due to their mating benefits rather than survival advantages. So, ultimately if something helps them to mate, it is again another in terms of survival of a species, this is important. So, ultimately something will be passed to the next generation. So, in a way it is connected to survival, not immediate survival, but passing certain traits to the next generation. So, if something helps you to mate, that is also an survival strategy. So, theory of sexual selection says some of the traits also evolve not just because of just survival, but it enhances the mating probability of a particular organism in the species. For example, these are the kind of pictures of things which makes them less likely to survive, but again these are kind of prominent. So, because theory of sexual selection can explain some of this. So, basically this sexual selection, as Darwin outlined, manifests mostly in two forms. One is intrasexual selection, which basically it says members of the same sex compete for mating opportunities with the winners, gaining greater access to the mates. So, intrasexual selection means within the same sex, member of the same sex, because let us say males, they compete for mating with the female. So, in that context, whoever is winner in whatever context, either strength or some beauty in terms of expression, that traits aid in success of this context. So, it will have an advantage in terms of mating within the let us say same sex of the same population, either males or female. So, something will be more advantageous for mating. So, those qualities will likely to make them as a winner in terms of mating. So, among all the males, let us say someone who is more strong or someone who has much more attractive features are more likely to be selected by the female for mating. So, these traits evolve because victorious individuals mate more frequently, passing on their genes. So, that is called intrasexual selection, and it could also express in terms of intersexual selection, which basically means individuals of one sex chooses to mate based on certain qualities. So, trait favored by mates evolved because individual possessing them are selected more often. So, within the male female distribution, one particular trait is more selected by, let us say, female, then that trait is likely to be passed on. So, that is intersexual, means both the sexes, male and female, one particular trait which gets chosen more and more is more likely to passed on. Within the same sex, let us say male, whatever characteristics is more appropriate or more attractive is also selected more, and so on. So, it could express either in the form of intrasexual selection or it could be in the form of intersexual selection. So, for example, so conversely, individuals lacking some of those desired traits are less likely to mate, leading to the decline of that kind of genes and so on. So, when we talk about, so this is the basic background of evolutionary principles, which kind of is a basic explanation for a lot of things. Now, let us see in the terms of psychology how evolutionary psychology talks about that, and more specifically we will look into how it can be applied to personality psychology. So, evolutionary psychology basically in broader sense involves three principles when we talk about more specifically in the context of psychology. Three major principles we need to understand. One is called as domain specificity, another is numerousness, and third one is functionality. These three principles are important in terms of understanding evolution psychological aspects. So, domain specificity basically means that human mind, so we are talking more in the context of psychological aspects. So, human mind is not a general purpose cognitive system, but a collection of specialized mechanism shaped by evolutionary pressures to solve specific challenges in the environment. Okay. So, when we talk about human mind, it is not just one thing. So, human mind has evolved various functions depending on while adapting to the challenges of their environment. So, if you see human race as they evolved, so they faced many challenges throughout the evolution, and their mind also developed certain domain specific functions to survive or adapt to the challenges posed by those environment. Okay. So, human mind or cognitive system became very domain specific, they evolve into different functions, specialized functions. So, mind is not one thing, mind can do various functions which are domain specific. So, humans have evolved specialized cognitive mechanisms for adaptive problems such as mate selection, social bonding, parental care, cooperation. So, these are different domains where mind has evolved and try to kind of based on the evolutionary pressure, they evolve strategies to survive. So, that is the idea of domain specificity. So, adaptations are believed to be specific to particular domains. So, whenever there is a particular type of set of challenges, mind evolved to face those challenges. So, mental functions developed in the diverse domains, meaning they are evolved to solve specific problems. So, when we talk about specific problems and specific things have evolved, so those are like domain specificity principles that talks about that human mind has evolved into various domains of functions. So, for example, if you talk about food selection, a general rule like eat the first thing that you find would be harmful, because that is not something good for survival, as it does not differentiate between safe and harmful items. If you see whatever you find and eat, that can lead to death and so on. Evolution favors specialized mechanisms, where evolution has gave us certain tendencies to like certain kind of food which are kind of good for our body and survival. For example, our body kind of prefers, more preference is given to calorie dense fat and sweet kind of sugar rich foods, which may have health repercussion obviously if when you talk about long term health and so on, but for survival some of these preferences are good, because let us say you are not getting food and first thing which is required for your body is obviously calorie rich food. So, if your body is kind of designed to get attracted to those kind of food. So, guiding us towards more beneficial choices in terms of survival and so on. Obviously, food choices and what is healthy and what is not is a complex topic. Evolutionary purpose is not, we may not be directly applying to all these complexities, but it is more about how it helps you to survive and so on. So, domain specificity also arises because various adaptive challenges required unique solutions, and so mind developed unique qualities, different types of qualities. Our mind can do diverse functions. So, one kind of mental ability is developed for, let us say, mind and body evolved for choosing certain kind of food. Mind also evolved, mind body evolved for, let us say, selecting, choosing, preferring certain kind of mates for, for mating and so on. So, like that, there are different kinds of system evolved, mind body's apparatus, where they certain kinds of things were preferred for survival and so on. So, basically domain specificity suggests that evolution crafts somewhat specialized solutions for each adaptive problems. Okay. So, that is the idea of domain specificity. Numerousness, again, these are all connected concepts. The idea focuses on different aspect, but all these three principles are connected to each other, like different aspect of the same thing. When we talk about numerousness, basically idea says, when we in the last concept we talked about domain specificity. Here basically it is saying, so there are numerous such domain specific functions have evolved. So, it is not just one or two, it is numerous such functions. So, that is the idea of this principle, numerousness. So, it suggests that human mind is composed of multitude of such psychological mechanism designed to address numerous adaptive problems encountered throughout evolution. So, throughout evolution we faced numerous such problems which required unique solutions. Our mind also evolved, mind body evolved for dealing with all these numerous challenges. So, numerous such mechanism evolved. Throughout human evolution, our ancestors encountered diverse adaptive challenges leading to development of numerous adaptive mechanisms. This diversity is evident in the array of physiological and anatomic features of the body also, not just mind. In the body also you see numerous functions have evolved. For example, heart for blood circulation, liver for detoxification, larynx for preventing choking, sweat glands for thermal regulation. If you see, the body also evolved numerous mechanisms just to survive. Similarly, mind also evolved numerous mechanisms. So, similarly, our mind equipped with specialized tool, we are more kind of each suited to handle different challenges we encounter. So, for example, our mind also evolved certain mechanism like fears of snakes and height. A lot of people have this kind of fear, if you see in the population, no? Fear of snake, fear of height, lots of population have this kind of fear. So, it has something to do with the evolutionary mechanism. So, for example, this fear of snakes, fear of height, all this helps you to survive. It is a kind of basic survival instinct. So, your whole body reacts to certain stimuli which could be harmful for you. So, additionally, humans also likely to adaptations for mate selection, detecting social cheaters, habitat preference, child rearing, forming alliances and so on, diverse things. We all know about lot of things. So, these adaptations correspond to the diverse challenges which we faced in our evolutionary history. Third one is functionality. Again, it is connected to the other thing that we talked about, only the focus is on function here. Numerousness focuses one on numbers, domain was more of specific domains, here functionality focuses more on functions. So, the principle of functionality in evolutionary psychology assert that psychological traits and behaviors observed in human have functional significance. They serve a purpose that contributes to survival. So, whatever functions have evolved, either psychological or even bodily functions, all these are remaining because they have survival or reproductive advantages. So, every physical organ has specific functions, as we discussed, liver for filtering toxins. Our psychological mechanisms are specific functions that contribute to our survival. So, a lot of this psychological mechanism evolved for survival. As we said, things like fear, love, jealousy, curiosity, all are survival related important functions that evolve in our mind. Fear helps us to avoid danger, love encourages bonding and cooperation, jealousy protects relationship, curiosity drives exploration and learning. So, a lot of these functions actually evolve for survival. Obviously, human beings, when they become very complex, a lot of these things also can become corrupted and so on. But the idea was all these things that evolved had a survival advantage, even negative emotions related things like jealousy and so on. So, they were kind of evolved to protect relationship and so on. So, if you see, this is just a summary of how all the three principles. So, in the domain specificity, just an examples are given in the on the right side. Here focuses on the domain specific functions that evolved to face certain challenges. For example, cheater detection. Humans have developed specialized cognitive processes to identify and respond to individuals who cheat or take advantages of cooperative arrangement. So, for example, any behavior which is not good for harmonious relationship in a group and so on. For example, if works is given and somebody is cheating, people generally very easily detect who is cheating, who is sincerely working and not. This is a mechanism that human mind can easily detect, because this is evolved to kind of survive and has an advantage in the group living and so on. Numerousness, example like multiple cognitive modules like language processing, mathematical reasoning, spatial navigations, all these serve different functions. So, numerous such evolution has happened. Functionality, one example we can give like fight or flight response, or all the emotions that we talk about, fear, jealousy and so on. In the fight and flight, what happens is a mental adaptation which prepares whenever we face any danger, our body either fights if the situation is right or run away, flights, if there is a threat in the environment. So, it is a basic mechanism of the mind body to protect oneself. So, let us see now more in the context of personality how evolutionary psychology can be applied. In that context, we will be talking about two more main theories. One is Buss theory of personality and adaptation, and then life history theory we will be talking about. So, let us start with the Buss. So, his photograph is given here. So, David Buss, basically he is one of the prominent person who kind of linked lot of psychological principles with the evolutionary psychology. How evolutionary psychology and the concept of adaptation can be explained in the context of human personality. He did lot of research in that direction. So, he basically outlined that evolutionary theory provides a framework for understanding personality. So, he used this whole evolutionary principles as a framework or as a foundation to explain human personality. So, he said three more main important things that we can kind of understand from evolutionary perspective is that evolutionary psychology or evolutionary principle help us to understand the major goals of humans and the problems that need to be addressed. So, what kind of problems we face and what are the goals we have and what are the problems that we face in terms of survival and the reproductive success, that help us to identify better as a human race if we talk about. So, goals what we have and what kind of problems we face. Also, it can describe psychological mechanisms that evolved in human beings to achieve these goals. So, what are the goals and problems we face? What are the mechanisms, psychological mechanism evolved to face or address those goals and problems? And the third one is evolutionary psychology also kind of help us to understand how personality and individual differences in behavior that humans use to reach these goals. So, all human beings are not same, there are different types of individuals. How these different types of individuals addresses these goals and problems of life, evolutionary psychology can address that also. So, let us see how in what way he more kind of linked evolutionary psychology with the personality psychology. So, David Buss he kind of proposed that all human lives in group. We are social animals. So, we live in groups which brings both reward and challenges in achieving society's goals. So, group living is a unique is a kind of common characteristics or is a main one of the principal characteristics of human life, because we are social animals, we live in society, we live in group. So, now when group living happens or when individuals live in groups, large groups or societies, it has its own advantages and disadvantages in terms of survival, in terms of reproduction, success and so on. So, group living has advantages like what happens when we live in groups offer protection from predators. So, when we live together it helps you to protect collectively, because everybody will come together and protect each other. So, predators cannot kind of in terms of like more preliminary language, if we use predators that was there in modern society, it is not predator but different kinds of problems which we collectively can solve. It also enhanced opportunities for collective hunting, like mostly in the prehistorical context if you look at it, resource sharing, increased chances of finding to mate, all of which support these goals. So, these are some of the advantages of living in groups. So, it helps, it protects you, it helps you to share resources, everybody will have resources which can be shared together. It also enhances the chances of finding a mate and mating. No, if you live alone, you cannot find mate. So, group living gives you that opportunity. So, all these things are advantageous for survival and so on. However, group living also has certain challenges which hinders these goals of survival in terms of such as conflicts between group members and spread of disease. So, when we live in group, there is also possibility of conflicts and fights and threat of killing one another, which happens. That is also a risk for survival, and many communicable diseases can spread very easily if you live in a group. So, that can wipe out whole population, which has happened in the many times in the history. Whole groups have kind of wiped out because of spread of disease and so on. So, those challenges are also there. So, David Buss used this social context of group living as a foundation to explain how humans have developed specific personality traits. Now, since group living has both advantages and disadvantages, so David Buss used his theory to explain how different personality traits have evolved to maximize this group situation in terms of surviving. So, that this we avoid those conflicts and problems and maximize those chances of group living in terms of survival and cooperation. So, individual personalities have evolved to face these challenges of group levels, and one of the main evolution that happens is personality traits have evolved to overcome obstacles in the group conflicts and so on. What kind of things have evolved in terms of personality? For example, Buss says 5-factor model of personality, which we will be discussing more detail in the next module. Basically, 5-factor model says human beings can be very easily, individual differences within human beings can be explained using 5 factors, 5 personality traits. So, we will be just saying what are those traits. More detail we will be discussing in the next module about this 5-factor model, but this is one of the most empirically valid and most theory which is most popular and received maximum empirical support, that 5 factors are good enough to explain individual differences within the population. 5 traits are good enough. So, this 5 traits is called 5-factor model of personality, and he used this model to explain why these 5 factors have evolved in the first place, because they have certain advantages in terms of survival, increasing chances of survival and reproduction and so on. So, these 5 factors are these actually. So, very briefly we will be talking here, but we will be explaining in more detail in the next module. So, one is trait is called openness trait, which talks about imagination, creativity, curiosity. The more openness you have, more imaginative, more creativity, more curiosity you have. So, some people are high on openness, some people are low on it. So, if you are low on openness, you will have less imagination, less creativity, less curiosity to know something. So, this is one trait where individual differences happen, someone may be high in this, someone may be low in this. Another is conscientiousness, which is more about organization, dependability, discipline, how organized you are, how dependable you are, how disciplined you are in your life. So, if you are high on it, you will have these qualities. If you are low in it, you will have the opposite of this. You will be disorganized, you will be you will not be dependable, you will have less discipline in your life and so on. So, third one is extroversion, which is more about how outgoing you are, social, assertive, excitement seeking people are extrovert. They always want to go out and meet people and do things. More social, outgoing kind of people are extrovert. If opposite is introvert, who loves to stay within their own world, they are less outgoing and so on. The fourth one is agreeableness, which is more about compassion, cooperativeness, trust, altruism. Some people are more cooperative, they can easily cooperate different people, they are more trustworthy, they can agree with things much more easily as compared to others. They are not argumentative and conflict type of person, they are more cooperative kind of people. People who are less agreeable, they are always argue with people, they will not accept anything and those kind of thing, argumentative type of people. More judgmental type of people, So, agreeableness is basically about that. The last one is neuroticism, which is about emotional instability, anxiety and so on. So, some people are emotionally unstable, they are more anxiety, they have much more instability, they get easily worried and stressed, So, that is neuroticism. If you are more on this, you will be more emotionally unstable. If you are less on neuroticism, you are more stable and so on. So, basically these are the 5 traits which says 5 vector model are good enough to explain all human differences. Human beings only differ in these 5 traits. So, Buss used these 5 traits to explain his evolutionary theory. He views this 5 factor model of personality as capturing the core dimension of human behavior. So, that is what theory also 5 factor model also says, these are the core dimensions. He says this 5 factor model of personality arises from a broad spectrum of human behavior, creating an adaptive landscape. So, these 5 factors according to him reflects adaptive landscape, because all these traits are important in terms of adaptation or survival. So, these traits help individuals navigate social complexities, cooperative relationships, overcome challenges, thereby enhancing their evolutionary fitness. How they are important? Let us see some of the examples. So, according to Buss, certain personality traits facilitate cooperation among individuals to achieve species wide goals such as surviving and reproduction. For example, traits like low neuroticism, which means more emotional stability, calmness, which is one of the trait of personality. So, this is something is important for individuals to stay emotionally stable and less reactive to stress. So, this is good for survival. People who are more of emotional instability. So, basically this low neuroticism as a trait will be selected by the evolutionary principles in terms of survival. So, such people will have more chances of kind of getting better adapted in the situations. If you are having low neuroticism, people who are active, sociable, adventurous and person oriented, like high on extroversion, this also promotes social interaction and engagement, which is also good. That does not mean introvert people are less likely to survive or something like that. Introvertness has its own advantages in terms of, so in certain contexts introvert people may be better doing or adapting, in certain context extroverts are better. So, in terms of group living, because we are living in the society, from the social perspective extrovert as a trait is much better suited in terms of survival, which may not be, many introverts people may be highly achieving in terms of lot of other things. So, it is not that other extreme is not reliable or not required or something like that. So, there is no judgment in terms of like that, it is more like certain qualities which are more good for group living or social living, and in terms of collective collective evolution, collective survival and so on. Cooperative and trustfulness, high agreeableness is another trait which also encourages harmonious and trusting relationship. This is more kind of better for group relation, group harmony and so on. Another one is, that is another trait that we discussed already, is high conscientiousness, which is about more practical, reliable, hardworking, ambitious, organized people, that ensures dependability and effective task management, which is also good for survival. And the last one is openness, which basically the order is any order you can say. So, openness is about knowledgeable, curiousness, analytical skills, more open to new experiences. This fosters intellectual engagement and adaptability. The more open you are, more likely to understand and adapt to new situations and so on. So, these traits collectively supports cooperation necessary for species survival and resolution of group conflicts. So, this is how personality traits are important in evolutionary perspective for collective survival. So, this is how this theory links personality traits, they evolved for certain purposes and they help you, how they help you to for survival and better reproductive success in the society and so on. So, this is how personality traits can be seen as an evolutionary, from the evolutionary perspective. These 5 factors are also important in the relationship context. Broadly we talked about them in terms of social context, but more specifically in the relationship context also they are important, as they are very evident actually. So, David Buss in 2011 he examined how this 5 factor model actually emerged in the context of relationship, how they are more important in the context of relationship, which is an important aspect of reproductive success and survival. So, high level of extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness and emotional stability, low neuroticism and openness to experience, which we all discussed in the last context, these are all sought after in partners. These qualities makes one some more suitable as a partner or in a relationship context. So, you are more likely to have a better relationship, more chances of passing your genes to the next generation and so on, because if you are able to attract more mates, because these qualities if you have, you are more likely to attract mates, because these are more commonly sought after qualities and you are more likely to pass on your genes to the next generation. So, in the relationship context, these 5 factors are also very important. Traits such as considerate, affectionate, understanding, kind, dependable and loyal corresponding to agreeableness and conscientiousness, and all these are very important in relationships. These qualities are sought after in relationship and more likely to attract mate and so on. So, this desirable attribute like dependability, emotional stability, pleasing dispositions are all also emphasized. So, these traits support the idea that personality characteristics within the 5 factor model play a very significant role in forming and maintaining relationship. So, overall for group living as well as more specific to relationship, these 5 factors we can say they evolved, because they also enhances your chances of survival and reproductive success. So, this is how personality traits could be connected to evolutionary perspective. The next theory that we will be talking about is life history theory, again another theory that links evolutionary perspective to the personality theory. So, this theory, life history theory, was developed by a biologist, his name is E. O. Wilson and some other colleagues, but majorly he was the person who examines how organisms schedule growth, survival and reproduction over their lifetime to maximize reproductive success. So, basically he was focusing on the life history throughout the life, how an organism, not only just humans, but overall the organisms, what kind of strategies they apply to lead a particular type of life, so that it maximizes their chances of reproduction, chances of survival. So, this is why that is what is called life history. So, he looks at not just one episode of life, but whole history of life of an organism or an individual, what kind of strategies they apply to maximize their chances of survival and reproductive success. So, that is the basic idea of life history theory. Now, what happens here? So, in this framework, the evolutionary psychology it highlights the importance of understanding how individuals allocate resources in the various life tasks that how they assign resources, which one is given more importance throughout their life. So, allocation of resources is also an important indicator that where the focus is given and how it maximizes their chances of survival and reproduction. So, life history theory examines how organisms including humans, so it talks about all the organisms including humans optimize their survival and reproductive success by making trade-off between various biological and psychological resources or investment. What kind of investment organisms do? Biological investment as well as psychological investment, means energy and focus in terms of psychological investment, and how it maximizes their chances of survival. So, basically what this theory says, life history strategy can be of two broad categories. If you see all the organisms including humans, so there can be two broad categories of life history strategy. Different organisms use different strategies. Broadly, these two strategies comes into the picture. One is fast life history strategy. So, what happens here? It is characterized by early reproduction, high number of offspring, less parental investment per offspring and a shorter lifespan. This strategy is often adopted in an environment where there is a resource scarce and unpredictability there. So, fast life histories are adopted by in certain organisms, which are basically fast strategy, means what? They will have early reproduction will happen, in a very early reproduction will happen, number of offspring will be high, it's more number of birth will happen, less in parental investment, parents will be less invested in the offspring, they will just reproduce more and more, and they will not focus on their overall quality of life and so on, and a shorter lifespan. So, the lifespan itself is short. So, this is mostly evident in the situation where resource is very less and the life is very unpredictable. So, this can happen to certain organisms, including even in human life also in certain context. So, life history, this is called fast life history. So, certain animals, certain humans could use this fast life history as a strategy. Another just opposite to this is slow life history strategy. What happens here? It is just opposite to the first one. So, it involves delayed reproduction, fewer offspring, high parental investment per offspring and longer lifespan. So, this strategy is typically seen as mostly in stable environments and where resources are abundant. This strategy is used by organisms when they have stable environments, secure environment and resources are abundant. Mostly in that context, slow life history strategies are applied, and where there is a lack of less resource unpredictability, a lot of organisms use fast life history strategy. So, this life history theory can explain variation in behavior and personality trait by linking them to evolutionary pressures. So, based on these different life strategies, that there can be different personalities evolved out of it, which can shape different types of personality because of different priorities in life. So, this is just a summary. So, reproduction timing early in case of fast, delayed in terms of slow. So, here it is number of offspring high, parental investment less, lifespan shorter, scarce and unpredictable environment, scarce or unpredictable environment mostly, and this is the environment in which slow is delayed, fewer offspring, higher parental investment, longer lifespan, abundant and stable environment. For example, some organisms like, if you see here spectrum of it, some animals like, like mouse and so on, if you can see the fast life history kind of strategy. For some animal like, elephant and so on, there is a slow life history strategy. So, across different animals, there are different strategies used. Now, in terms of applying this life history theory in humans, or is more kind of using this theory. One of the psychologists used this theory of life history more in the context of human, and another thing was by Jean-Philippe Roustan. He is an US psychologist. He drew upon this concept from life history theory and he formulated another theory called as differential K theory. Basically, life history theory, he used this name to more in the psychological context. So, the differential theory is an extension of life history theory, mostly because it is developed by a psychologist in 1985. He introduced this concept of K as a central dimension representing the trade-off between parental investment and mating effort. So, K as a kind of more like a ratio, how much parental investment and how much mating efforts are there. Based on that, K as a kind of concept that can be calculated. In differential K theory, individuals and populations are positions along a continuum from high to low K strategies. So, by calculating K, we can have individuals who have, let us say, high K strategies, low K strategies. So, high K strategy basically includes slow in lifespan. If you see the slow life history strategy that we talked about, here in the last one, this one slow life history strategy. So, high K strategy are basically slow life history strategy. So, here slower life history pace, greater parental investment, emphasis on quality over quantity in offspring. Okay. So, this is high K strategy. Some individuals apply this. For some individuals, they use low K strategies, which is fast life history strategy. Okay. So, faster life history pace, priorities on early reproduction, high fertility rates, less parental investment. So, these are two kind of K score can be calculated for different individuals. Somebody may fall in the high K strategy, somebody may fall in the low, somebody may be in the middle, whatever it is. So, this can be easily calculated by certain scores and so on. Okay. So, this theory gives an option to calculate that also. So, Roustan suggested that individuals and group differences in behavior such as social behaviors and psychological traits can be explained by variations in K strategies. So, personalities and individual differences can be explained using these K strategies. So, trait associated with high K strategies. So, somehow personality can be linked to this theory, because it is mostly developed by psychologists. So, he linked this theory with the personality traits. So, if you see some of the psychological traits associated with high K strategies means slow life history wala. So, traits like conscientiousness, long term planning, emotional stability, some of the traits that we discussed, they are connected to high K strategies. On the other hand, trait associated with or personality traits associated with low K strategy means first, people who are very impulsive, risk taking, sensation seeking, these traits could promote low K strategy or fast life history strategy. So, certain personality trait will lead people towards either of these strategies, either high K strategies or low K strategies can be determined by the personality traits of the people. So, this was the theory. One of the one of the researcher actually tested this theory empirically with the real population. So, in one study by Aurelio Joseph Figueredo and colleagues in 2005, they tested this differential K theory of relationship between Ruston's concept of K, high K and low K strategies and the personality traits among university students. So, he tested it out of the human population, and he tested out they tested out in the research how that is linked to certain personality traits. So, they measured K factor assessment, how K was measured using things like childhood attachment, adult attachment with certain figures, mating effort, Machiavellianism, again another trait which is mostly related to in some of the concepts which are related to manipulating people and so on. Risk taking attitudes. So, these are mostly related to, you can say, high fast life history strategies, low K strategies. So, he measured both the possible personality traits linked to both fast and slow strategies. So, these are some of the measurement they did to calculate the K score. The lower scale or the factor indicated a strategy of low parental investment, which is kind of low K strategy, basically high life history strategies that we talked about, low parental investment, high mating effort and so on, which indicates, and high score indicates parental investment. So, this K score can be calculated and one can have a high score, low score. So, if it is a high score, that means that is kind of slow life history strategy, which indicate high parental invest, low mating effort. If K score is low or low score of K score represent low parental investment, high mating effort. So, this came from the life history theory only. So, he tested it out and measured this in the actual population. So, what the result was found? The result shows there was a gender difference in the K score. Females tended to score high on K factor than males. So, females scored high on the K factor as compared to males in the population, whatever jo population they measured, potentially reflecting evolutionary differences in the reproductive strategies of the gender. So, females and males, their strategies could be different in terms of gender, because females scored high on K factor means they prefer more of a slow life history strategy. So, high parental investment, low mating effort and so on. So, this aligns with the evolutionary theory, suggesting that women, due to the high cost of reproduction, tend to prioritize parental investment, while men may adopt more competitive and promiscuous mating strategy, because their investment on themselves is less as compared to females. So, female chooses different strategy. So, they scored high on the K score. They also found certain personality traits were specifically related to certain strategies. So, this study also examined this relationship of K factors with certain personality traits using 3-factor model of, there is a theory of Eisen's model that we will be also talking in detail in the next module, which says 3 major factors of personality are psychoticism, extroversion and neuroticism. We will be discussing more of them in the next module. So, these are like extroversion neuroticism we have already talked about, and psychoticism is another trait which is more related to less concern for emotional concern for other people and so on. So, this is more of an kind of risk taking impulsive kind of characteristics. Now, they did not find any relationship of K with the extroversion. So, extroversion was not relevant as a trait in terms of mating strategy. They found negative relationship of K with the neuroticism, means lower parental investment, high mating, linked to the effort linked with anxiety, worry and moodiness. So, basically K score was negatively, the higher the neuroticism, less was the K score, means people with lot of worry and anxiety, they kind of more predisposed for lower parental investment, high mating effort and so on. So, neuroticism as a trait was linked negatively with the K. Negative relationship with the psychoticism. So, psychoticism was also the higher the K relationship, higher the psychoticism, lower is the K score. So, basically people with high psychoticism, they have lower parental investment, high mating effort associated with aggression, impulsivity, antisocial behavior. So, these are some of the characteristics of psychoticism. So, the more of these qualities like aggression, impulsivity, antisocial behavior, higher people have this strategy, they are more likely to have low K score, means lower parental investment, high mating effort. So, this is how life history theory can be connected to certain personality traits. So, overall the study suggests that evolutionary concept of life history as reflected in the K factor is related to personality traits. Particularly these two traits are important, neuroticism and psychoticism. It provides insight into individual differences in the history strategy linked to various personality traits. So, the kind of strategy people use in terms of survival and so on can also be connected to certain personality types. So, certain types of people prefer certain types of strategies. So, it could be linked to individual differences. So, with this I stop here. So, these are some of the concepts related to biopsychological perspective to personality. This is how we kind of understood from the diverse perspective how biology could be connected to individual differences in the personality traits. So, in the next module we will be talking about some other aspects of personality. With this I stop here. Thank you.